So 1978 Halloween. I really want to get your take on this because I know this is probably the only slasher movie you really like, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, Black Christmas, which preceded this, Bob
Yeah.
Clark's film, I liked. Psycho, I liked. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I don't know if I would say I liked it, but I certainly respect it as an impressive piece of filmmaking. And this is too. I don't think I would rate it as John Carpenter's best film. I think I like The Thing and Escape from New York and Big Trouble in Little China a little bit better. I enjoyed them more, but I enjoyed this because of its simplicity. Uh, we've spoken so much recently about how uh, the key to successful horror movies is very often not telling the audience everything, leaving a little to the imagination. It's kind of a cliche, you hear that said all the time about Val Lewton's films, that the imagination of the audience is uh, likely to come up with something more frightening than what the filmmaker can show.
Yeah.
But in this case, it seems to me that the great affection that everybody has for this film is probably due to the fact that has wonderful atmosphere, a wonderful Halloween atmosphere, autumnal quality. And there's so much time spent with that, going through the streets and with the leaves falling. And I understand they shot this at the wrong time of year, so there were no brown leaves falling. They had to paint the leaves.
Yeah, well, they actually filmed it in California, so that was the other problem.
Yes,
You look down the street and you see palm trees in the back.
And they also have the outdoor hallways, or the schools have that unusual thing with outdoor passageways for the kids. So I guess their lockers are in outdoors. But that atmosphere, despite the fact that it was shot in California, it's remarkably effective in creating that atmosphere of fall and the pleasures of Halloween and that sort of feeling of anticipation that you have as a child on Halloween night. That's all there. And so it makes it a very pleasant experience. And I guess that's why it was so successful, because this was a movie that people who really don't like these type of movies could go to and enjoy. The violence is really very minimal. There's no gore to speak of, really.
Yeah, very little blood.
Very little, yeah. And I guess the only thing that they really had to worry about for television was cutting out PJ Soul's tits.
Yeah.
But, it was actually quite savvy on the part of Carpenter and whoever the producer was, I forget his name, to come up with something that was, there would always be a time in the year where people would want to watch this.
Yeah.
And it was ready to go right onto television. I mean, with very minimal editing, the breast shots could easily be, masked. Some of the shots, her breasts are right at the bottom of the screen. So it's just a question of reframing the shot, so that you could eliminate the nipples. And the gore, as far as I can see, it's practically nothing. I suppose I didn't watch the television version again. I just watched the theatrical version.
Yeah.
But probably the strongest thing is when he nails the guy up to the wall.
To the wall, yeah, it'd probably be, yeah.
I don't know how they got around that in the TV version, but I see they shot a lot of additional stuff when they were shooting Halloween 2. They shot a bunch of additional stuff that could be included in the television release of Halloween 1.
Right.
And when you see that stuff, you realize how unnecessary, any sort of extraneous stuff is. They really did get it just right by sticking just to the most important things and avoiding going off on tangents. That long scene with Donald Pleasance talking to the two heads of the hospital that Michael Myers is being transferred into. That's really just dead air,
Yeah.
There's nothing going on there at all. And it almost seems like they're intentionally slowing down their delivery to stretch the scene out as long as possible. Same could be said of that scene with Jamie Lee Curtis talking to PJ Souls. Apparently, Jamie Lee Curtis had her hair shortened. She had a shorter hairstyle when they shot that. So she has a towel wrapped around her head. But that's a completely superfluous scene, right? It even ends with her standing by the door for what feels like several minutes singing.
Yeah.
That's just stretching the soup. And I guess that was necessary because whatever little edits that they had to make for standards and practices on television meant that they had to put something in to bring it up to a 2-hour running time, So I guess those little extra scenes did the trick. But simplicity is what makes Halloween work.
Yeah, I think that's what makes this my favorite slasher movie. And Michael Myers is my favorite slasher because there's, especially when I'm talking about just this one. Once you get into part 2 and how he's related to her, and you get into the later sequels where he's, being resurrected by the Thorn cult, I'm just like, I don't care about all that. This one here, the simplicity of like he's just a guy that kills people. That's all you need to know.
At the end, when Dr. Loomis says, Laurie Strode says, was he the boogeyman? And Donald Pleasant says, as a matter of fact, he was.
Yeah.
That really sums up the whole movie as a kind of urban folklore tale. The explanation really is unnecessary. The movie's existence is justified by that punchline.
Yeah.
At the end, you realize there aren't going to be no answers here. And as they show you the different shots of the house at the very end, and you hear Michael Myers' breathing become more and more omnipresent and sort of abstract, it sounds filtered in some way, as if he's everywhere.
Yeah.
That really is, in a way, sort of telling the audience, this is not meant to be taken literally. We're not supposed to know all the details. In the same way that the fog was sort of presented as a tale told around the campfire to children. That's what this is. It's a tale told to scare babysitters into not sleeping with their boyfriends.
Yeah. Well, I also think it also kind of goes along with the other sort of urban legends, the razor blade and the candy and all that stuff that, the boogeyman's going to kill you on Halloween, just seems like it kind of goes along with that a little bit too.
Right. And it does also anticipate, I guess Clive Barker wrote the original story for Candyman.
Yeah.
And now we have, of course, the Slender Man and other, what do they call them, creepypasta characters. That same thing is you get enough detail about the background of this strange creature to be intrigued by it and to be sort of scared by it.
Yeah.
But there's no logical information. It's all information that's on the level of almost like QAnon type stuff,
Yeah.
So you just have to accept, JFK's coming back too.
Right.
And in this case, it's all done for pleasure. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a pretty brutal film. It has a certain wit to it, of course, and it's impressive filmmaking, but it's very grim, and hard to watch. This is a pleasant film. This is a pleasant slasher film. And I'm sort of intrigued by the fact that a character like this, Michael Myers, who kills his sister and ends up in a mental institution and is clearly a fucked up person, that once he puts on the black jumpsuit and the William Shatner mask, he becomes everybody's ideal cool serial killer. And I guess the music helps. Music always helps to
it's a great score.
But why do you suppose that is? Why do you suppose that, particularly among certain folks, they have a certain affection and admiration for that character? What do you think it is? I mean, my theory, I don't know if you would agree with this, is if you're trying to understand why people think he's cool, all you have to do is look at who he's killing.
Yeah.
It may be sort of a Revenge of the Nerds type thing going on.
Yeah.
Because the characters, I think we were just talking in the last episode about how, one of the more recent episodes, about how so many of the 80s movies were teenage sex comedies, and how the tropes that you saw in teenage sex comedies sort of infected all the other genres, that you
Right.
would
Yeah.
see elements of those teenage sex comedies in like horror movies, like slasher movies. And that's true here, although the teenage sex comedy, you know, the popularity of that genre hadn't really exploded yet. But here we have the babysitter arriving in the van,
Right.
right, with the beer cans and the boyfriend. And apparently, these kids exist in a world where even as a babysitter, you really don't have any responsibilities. You basically just show up with your beer and screw around,
Yeah.
you know. And the parents never reach out. It's sort of like almost like a Peanuts level view of adults. You know, they don't go so far as to have the adults talking in that wop, 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 wop type
Right.
voice, but all of the adults in the film seem kind of distanced,
Distant.
and
Yeah.
they're almost like caricatures or symbols for adults. Uh, uh, Her dad, I guess is it PJ Soul's dad? No, it's the other girlfriend whose father is the
Yeah. The
sheriff
cop. Yeah. Yeah. The sheriff. Yeah.
or a cop, whatever he is. He almost comes across as being a little creepy.
A little bit. Yeah.
You know, he's the first time we meet him, he is standing uncomfortably close to Laurie Strode, right? I mean, she bumps into him in the street, and then he's like grinning, and I was wondering when I first saw this movie if that was going to be uh, sort of a subplot, that he was a handy guy,
Right.
but they don't go there. They don't go there. They other adults other than Dr. Loomis are all pretty uh, empty, and there's no dimension to them at all. I mean, you could argue that there's no real dimension to Dr. Loomis either. He shows up as a fanatic and he ends up as a fanatic, and
Yeah.
there's no growth, or we don't learn nothing about him. He doesn't even, with the exception of that one scene that they shot for the TV version, where he's wearing a turtleneck sweater, he wears pretty much the same clothes all through this movie.
The entire series.
The entire series, yeah. And sort of made me wonder, what is there something that can be explored there? What is the morning routine of Michael Myers versus Dr. Loomis?
Yeah.
Do they both have a similar, they get up and shower and shave and make a little breakfast, have a cup of coffee, and lay out their clothes for the day? I mean, the fact that Dr. Loomis is going through all of this, and yet he seems very, his clothes are pressed and cleaned, and he always has his tie knotted up. That's extraordinary. But as I say, he and the other adults are just sort of like stand-ins for characters. They just represent.
Yeah. This one here's this is before the Loomis character went completely batshit crazy.
At what point does he do that?
And I guess after part 2, he's just like, he goes off the rails crazy. And this one here is just more. I mean, he's definitely involved more than what I think a psychiatrist would be if one of his patients escaped and was killing people, but definitely a better character in this movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would prefer that he stays perpetually on the edge of insanity rather than actually lapsing over. Again, it's sort of, I mean, people always say that they want to see something different, but I guess if you're going to like the 6th or 7th Halloween movie, you're really not being honest with yourself if you're saying you're looking for something different. I mean, here's a movie that has, I understand the most recent one ends with Laurie mano a mano fighting with Michael Myers once again. And the thought occurred to me, if you're in your 60s and you're still fighting with the masked killer that you were fighting with when you were in high school, you got to really re-examine your life choices. Something is wrong that a woman who's, and I think Jamie Lee Curtis is 63 or so, and yet here she is once again grappling with the same masked killer who, is in her age range, presumably. Is not quite 60, 63, but I assume he's not that much younger than her. So that's kind of an extraordinary thing. You would think that that would slow them down a little bit when they're doing these sequels. That they might say, maybe we can't keep doing these. And maybe that's one of the reasons why they seem to be setting up some sort of transition to a new franchise.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's ever going to work because people aren't interested in. I mean, they didn't become interested in this film just by chance. There were specific things that they wanted to see, and they want to see in the sequels. So you can't just say, "Well, we're discarding that." I mean, they've already done it once in this series, right? Halloween 3.
Halloween 3, which is my second favorite Halloween movie.
A lot of people.
I really enjoyed it.
A lot of people are very fond of that film, myself included. But it was a bomb at the box office. I was there.
For some reason, I always kept remembering it was just a straight to TV thing. Like I never remembered it coming out in the theaters.
It might just as well have gone straight to TV.
Yeah. It had a little bit of nudity, I think, now that I think about it.
Yeah, it might have. I haven't watched it in a while, but I guess what they do with those movies is if they're primarily targeting teen audience, but they throw in enough objectionable stuff to get an R. I don't know, Pete, if Halloween 3 got an R, but usually that's the routine that they do. They adjust the amount of objectionable stuff to get the rating that they want. If Halloween 3 got a PG, then that might be another reason why it was unsuccessful at the box office. But I assume Halloween got an R, right?
It should have, especially for the year that it came out.
Yeah, I would think the breast nudity by itself and the it's certainly adult content in the film, even though
it's rated R.
Right. So well, anyway, simplicity, I guess, is the key. Is and location,
yeah.
That's what you really, I'm seeing now that they're talking about how there's a great explosion in the number of these LED screens that they're using. The studios are putting in. Is it LED? I guess it is LED.
Some kind of gigantic screen that they stand in front of, and
I guess they're 360 degrees, or do they just stand in front of it and they rotate you? I don't know how it works exactly.
I think the screens are pretty much in like an entire room, like almost an entire wall, right. And then I guess there's like a computer hooked up to it that's generating the backgrounds and has like a camera, so the camera within the program moves
right
on the screen, which helps.
It moves in unison with the background imagery.
Yeah.
Oh, it sounds like a great innovation, but it seems now that there's too many of these studios that there aren't enough people who know how to use them, I guess.
Yeah.
And one of the people that they were interviewing on this, I guess, was the Hollywood Reporter that was talking about this. It was a director, and they said, he really misses being on location because there's so much you can get from being on location, so much that helps the film. Not every movie it takes place in outer space.
Right.
So why, if there's some possible location you can go to, why not go there instead of faking it? And I think that's absolutely true. I mean, the whole reason why movies like Halloween and Night of the Living Dead were so successful, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is because they were largely shot in real places. Night of the Living Dead entirely shot in a real place. Halloween may have had a few shots here and there that were done on a soundstage somewhere. I don't know, but for the most part, it feels like it was shot in a real place, which is that's the important thing.
Yeah.
So what else can we say about it? It's I mean, it seems to be. I don't know what your thinking is. What would you say about how is this a movie about children growing up? Because these are 17-year-olds, right? They're high school students.
I mean, it's got the younger kids in it, but I don't believe that it's about them or even for them, really, for anything younger than teenagers at the time.
So but it certainly has several kids in it as well. She's the babysitting kids. So you're sort of seeing, you get the center stage is occupied by folks who are 17 and younger, and the adult characters get much less screen time, and they're much less interesting, or it's harder to warm up to them very much because they're kind of flat characters.
No, there was one when I watched it today. There was a scene or a couple scenes that happened that for some reason I really never thought about before, and that's whenever Lori is trying to tell her friend that she's, I seen a guy behind the bushes. He's following us, and her friend's like, "Oh, you're crazy." And then later on, whenever the little kid, I guess his name is Tommy,
Right.
whenever he's telling her, "Hey, the boogeyman's outside," and she now all of a sudden she's like, "Oh, you're crazy.
That's right.
The boogeyman's not real." So they're kind of like almost like a contrast there between the two ages of
Right.
of the characters and how they're reacting to seeing something like that.
Right.
And nobody believing you.
Well, it's funny that that Lori didn't notice that herself, that she was saying the same thing to the kid that she had said to her. Lori seems to be one of a number of characters that have names that start with L in the credits. I don't know why that would be. Jamie Lee Curtis, who was the daughter of Janet Leigh, she certainly lasts much longer in this movie than
Janet Leigh did. Yeah, that's why I think that's why Carpenter wanted to get her in this movie, was to kind of have that connection to the Hitchcock.
It does work, and she's certainly the best actor in the movie.
Yeah,
by far. I like P.J. Souls, but she's not necessarily a master thespian. They portray her friends as kind of in an exaggerated way, almost like in a sitcom way.
Yeah, I was going to say the Annie character, which is who we were trying to think of before.
Right.
That actress was all right. The character was a little bit annoying when she started complaining to the kids about the dog.
Lindsay, Lester's barking again and getting on my nerves again. Oh, never mind. Guess he found a hot date.
Right. Yeah. Well, I wonder if he didn't intentionally get them to go a little bit over the top, just so that we wouldn't be too bothered when they get
killed.
Get killed. Yeah.
You're like, oh, thank God she's gone.
Yes. The showing up with the sheet and the glasses struck me as being an unusually amusing.
Yeah, because when you think about it, you're like, oh my, that's so out of character for Michael Myers, and you're like, well, wait a minute, what is this character?
Well, that's true.
Is it or is it not really out? You know what I'm saying? Is it something he would do?
But certainly in the context of this movie, that he would go through all that trouble seems unusual. But then again, you're right. He's a guy that actually dragged around the gravestone.
The tombstone, yeah. And then lugged it upstairs to...
Right, which was another thing we don't get to see.
Yeah. And actually brought that other... I mean, he killed P.J. Souls in that room, put her in the closet, and brought the Annie character all the way up there and put her... So I wonder if maybe the Annie character resembled his sister more than P.J. Souls' character, maybe? I don't know.
Well, he also somehow managed to tack that guy upside down inside the closet, which is a pretty good trick. The director of Black Christmas, Bob Clark, there was some question as to whether or not he was suggesting that John Carpenter got the idea for Halloween from him.
Right.
But apparently he said, even though they did have a discussion about it, apparently, and he suggested what ended up being the basic idea of Halloween to Carpenter. Apparently the script with that title came to him from another source. So it wasn't a question of John Carpenter having a chat with Bob Clark and then running off and stealing his idea.
Stealing his movie, yeah.
And in fact, Clark said there were a lot of people going around at that time with scripts with that name, and he was surprised that nobody had done it before. It is kind of odd that this was the first time anybody thought to do a horror movie, a real horror movie set at Halloween. You would have thought that it'd be no brainer. Most of the references.
And it wasn't even originally called Halloween. It was called The Babysitter Murders.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And then they changed it, I guess.
Good change.
I don't know. I don't know who came up with the change, but yeah, definitely worth it.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. I think to be able to start the movie with that glowing jack-o'-lantern and be able to zoom in on its eye,
Yeah.
especially since they were clever enough to make sure that it's a kind of an imperfect jack-o'-lantern with the eye
Yeah.
socket cut too low. That really, it sets the stage. And the idea that you would spend that much time at the beginning of the film uh, tracking in on a pumpkin just to give people, to get people in the right frame of mind, to give them that mood or that
Well, it
feeling.
works. I mean, it's not one of these hurry up and move along opening credits. I enjoy it.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I'm so surprised that the level of affection that people seem to have for it, because so often you hear folks, horror movie fans saying, oh, they don't want to see, they want to get to the action, they don't want to
Yeah.
see long dialogue scenes and whatnot. It takes its time. It takes quite a long time to get to any real action. And when it gets to the action isn't really that explicit.
Yeah.
So there's something going on here that people enjoy more than just it being a gory, splatter type film. I guess I don't know if there's been any sort of official declaration of this, but Jamie Lee Curtis counts as the first final girl. Is that the?
I guess she
have I
would
read this
be.
thing?
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's some distinction. She went on and she did.
Unless Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out first, then it would have been the
I,
Sally character.
I think I don't remember the Sally character's personal conduct, but in this movie, it seems that and in many of the films that followed, that imitated this film, the idea that it's the girl who isn't sleeping around that survives.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was the case with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre girl. But yeah, I mean, it's an entertaining movie. It's perfect for this time of year, and I guess we won't hold it against it that it led to so many inferior, sequels and imitations. I assume that Friday the 13th came out after this, right?
Yeah. Friday the
So,
13th didn't come out till 80.
so that's right away somebody taking the basic idea and making a less interesting movie, a less it's I guess astute business, astute filmmaking from a business standpoint, but it's not really as good a film as this, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a fan of the Friday the 13th movies, or if those are movies that we just enjoy as
They're just boobs and blood. That's all
right.
those are.
Sort of like horror fast food.
Yeah.
Well, I guess there's a place for that. And I guess we're still seeing movies like that coming out, aside of the Halloween, most recent Halloween sequel. There's still plenty of slasher movies and horror movies. So there must be some life in that. I wonder why, though. I wonder why there's an interest. I wonder why there's an excitement about serial killer characters. I mean, it's even true about TV shows and films that are about actual serial killers. Which,
oh yeah, like the recent Dahmer series
might be one of their biggest hits. So, well, go figure.
Yeah.
I gather that this is a particular favorite of yours, so I should be asking you to sing its praises.
Oh yeah, I think it's great. I mean, like I said, the Michael Myers character just being not know anything about him. He doesn't talk. The mask is probably the best mask out of I know not all of them wear masks, but it's definitely the best mask.
Right.
Just that plain white face. That's just real creepy when you think about that instead of as opposed to like the hockey mask or anything like that. It's just the best one. The fact that it's not just constantly him just killing everybody. You know what I'm saying? You've got all this build up and tension, and you can just sit back and kind of just enjoy these people enjoying Halloween.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It is kind of like that. It's like vicariously experiencing a Halloween in a small town.
Yeah.
It's actually the kind of Halloween that I never really had.
And no,
So,
we never really had that either.
it's like a fantasy, like almost like a Steven Spielberg Halloween.
Although we probably did watch The Thing from Another World
Yeah, I probably did
around
too.
that time. Yeah.
That's always been one of my favorite Halloween films as well. But I don't know if I would be watching Forbidden Planet as a Halloween
Yeah.
film. That's probably the only movie they had the rights to, those two films.
Yeah, I think another thing that probably helps this movie is the lower budget. I think whenever you have more money, you try to do more.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that, they just went out and got a Captain Kirk mask for $1 and painted it white. I mean, you wouldn't have got that if they would have had more money, because they would have they would have went to somebody to design something that didn't look as good.
Right. Well, that idea that Carpenter had, which I assume is based to a certain extent on The Thing, which is why The Thing is in this movie, of the shape, the roughly human shape,
Yeah.
that it doesn't have a lot of detail. When you see that, that has to be frightening, because a human being standing by the door and somebody that shouldn't be there, that they can't have good intentions. If you see a figure like that in the doorway, you're in trouble, right?
Yeah, and that's what makes it work too. Like whenever she's there and he's in the closet and just slowly starts moving into the light, and it just like the light catches that mask, right? And it's creepy as hell.
Right. Yeah, that is very effective. Yeah. But the funny thing is, when Carpenter went on and did his own version of The Thing, he went in a completely different
direction. Yeah.
So I guess he felt he had explored the shape as much as he could. But yeah, I guess at the end of the day, the scariest thing, if we're honest about it, the scariest thing is, a human being, a man especially.
Oh yeah.
That's
with no reasoning behind it. That's what makes it even worse. It's like you don't know why.
Right. The fact that he's just doing these things for his own pleasure, or because he feels compelled to do it, that makes him that much more frightening. Right? You can't reason with him, as I think Dr. Loomis says. Pleasance apparently took the part after Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing both turned
it down. Yeah.
It's not surprising to hear that Christopher Lee turned it down, because he pretty much made a career out of turning down good roles.
Yeah.
He did say that that was the biggest mistake he ever made in his professional life. I guess because he saw that Donald Pleasance, who took the job to pay off his alimony, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
And then got pretty much the rest of his life got increasingly bigger checks.
Bigger checks
as he did all the sequels. Yeah. Yes. So that
he didn't do anything else. He was just Dr. Loomis after this, right? He didn't do any other movies.
Well, I think he might have done a few others, but this, I mean, let's be honest. If you got this, what else do you need to do, right? He looks like he was still in decent physical shape. Doesn't look ill or anything like that.
Right.
But apparently he took the part, not just because of the money. He got $20,000 to do it, but also because his daughter said that she liked the music that Carpenter had done for Assault on Precinct 13, which was apparently, was it Lalo Schifrin that he was imitating in that? I haven't heard. Lalo Schifrin is the guy that, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He's the guy that did the music for Mission Impossible, and also for the Dirty Harry movies, or at least a few of them. So I guess John Carpenter was channeling him, and that score impressed Donald Pleasance's daughter. So I guess that's the way things work. You get good actors not because they're available or because they like your script, but because their daughter says,
because they're kids and want you to do it. Yeah.
But Peter Cushing, I can sort of understand, because I guess he had already done Star Wars by this time, so he probably didn't need to do, and he might have been actually, ill enough so that it would have been difficult for him. Especially, there's a certain amount of physical activity, so that probably would have been difficult for him. But hard to understand again why Christopher Lee was such a difficult person. They claim that they weren't offering enough money.
Enough
$20,000,
money,
I
yeah.
guess, was not enough. Nick Castle, who plays Michael Myers, apparently he went on to a career as a director himself.
Yeah, he directed the Halloween 3.
Oh, did he? Yeah.
Yeah.
I know he also did. Was that Nick Castle that did Halloween 3?
I believe so.
Yeah. Well, I see his credits include The Last Starfighter and
As the
Dennis the
director?
Menace. As the director, yeah.
Okay.
And the budget of the film, $320,000. So, not a micro budget film, but
No.
and apparently one of the first films to make use of the Panaglide system, which is, I guess, Panavision's version of a Steadicam.
Yeah, I think half the budget went to that.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it works. It's quite effective. When I was watching the movie this time, I wasn't aware of that fact, and I was watching it and I was saying, "See, you don't need a Steadicam."
Yeah.
Apparently, you do. They were using the equivalent of a Steadicam.
He even got a little bit of the lens flare on some of the porch lights when they were out filming outside. I thought that gave a nice little touch.
That always adds to it. Yeah. Well, all those things give you the feeling that you're in a real place, which makes the whole thing much more enjoyable. The fact that it takes place all in one night, similar to Night of the Living Dead, it gives you that feeling of there's no escape. Even though, if we really want to be picky about it, logically, there should have been an escape.
Oh, yeah.
There really is no reason why one person, no matter how strong he is, it can terrorize an entire community and nobody can do anything about it.
Especially when you set up the town as like being this nice, quiet little town where there's, everybody's nice. And then she goes beating on somebody's door to get help and they just like turn the light back off and shut the blind, like, get out of here.
Well, it goes to show you. They look nice, but I suppose they might say, well, they just figured it was somebody doing a Halloween prank, so that's why they closed.
Could have been, yeah.
But still, you're right. I like how he really stretches that scene of her trying to get back into the house, banging on the door and yelling to the kid, and Michael Myers he seems to takes him forever to get across that street.
Yeah.
But the suspense certainly, it reaches a peak there. So yeah, all in all, this is, I can see why people are fond of it, and I wish more horror filmmakers would focus on, creating atmosphere and drawing from the location, because it seems to me that in the 80s they started to move away from that. They started, like you had Charles Band's films and other companies that said, well, we have to meet the demand. There's such a tremendous demand for direct-to-video stuff that we'll start setting up our own studios and shoot things on sound stages. And a lot of those movies are damaged by that, I think.
Yeah.
If you take a simple concept and you don't shoot it in a real place, then what do you have really? And they almost start to feel like Ed Wood movies.
Oh yeah.
There's a flatness and a blandness to them. But anyway, this one
I was reading here that the first mask they were going to go with was a Don Post Emmett Kelly smiling clown mask that they put frizzy red hair on. I don't think that would have worked.
Emmett Kelly objected. Well, I think it didn't they have a clown mask in no, that was a Groucho Marx mask in Terror Train.
Yeah, it was Groucho Marx.
Yeah. But
there was another movie on New Year's Evil. They have a Stan Laurel mask. I think is what the character wears. But nothing beats the Captain Kirk mask.
Yeah, I agree. They do touch on the clown mask, though, right? That's an idea.
That's what the kid wears. That's what he wears when he's a kid.
Right.
He puts the clown mask on.
So you could say the current interest in killer clowns might have its roots in that.
We'll go back to Halloween. They shot it in 20 days. That's kind of shocking. Well, but I swear when you watch it from the when you see Jamie Lee Curtis at the beginning to where you see at the end, I swear she aged. She just looked older at the end of the movie.
Well, maybe the experience of making the film. Although, from what I hear from the behind the scenes stuff that we see, seems like everybody got along and it was an relatively easy shoot. But I like the fact that she looks, unmade up. I think that's another thing that's important in these films, is not to have the most perfect people.
Yeah,
They should look like folks that could conceivably still be in high school.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. And very often they won't do that. I think you see that particularly like when they do remakes of things like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, rather than picking people that are just average people, they pick supermodels, it seems, and everybody's dressed in the, latest fashions, or
Yeah.
even the grime and stuff seems to be put on them and to achieve a sort of a sexy, cool look, rather than just looking like somebody who got attacked by a serial killer. But yeah, the version I watched was the version on Blu-ray. I guess was put out for the 25th anniversary. I'm not sure. I think so. And they had a thing on it, and it was very light. It was an Anchor Bay disc.
Right.
It was very light on extras. It had the trailer, and I always thought the trailer was very effective.
Halloween night. A small American town. 15 years ago.
When I was a young man, when this movie was just coming out, I happened to be going on a regular basis to the theater where this film eventually premiered, and they ran the trailer. And the trailer scared the crap out of me. I was almost afraid to go to see the movie because I was afraid that it would be because by that time, I guess I had already seen Dario Argento's, what's the one he did with the Deep Red.
Oh, yeah.
And that was pretty rough. And I wasn't really, I appreciated the filmmaking, but it was pretty hard for me to get through. So I didn't really want to go through that again. And I was almost tempted to stay away from Halloween because it looked from the trailer. I have to admit, I was a little disappointed when I first saw it, even though I liked the film overall, because it didn't really terrorize me the way I expected it to. But maybe that's why it's remembered fondly. It's not too horrible to watch. But anyway, one of the other little extras that they had on the disc was an hour-long documentary about Jamie Lee Curtis going and doing her first convention.
Oh, really?
And she claimed that it was going to be her first and last. She did it for Horror Hound Weekend, I guess.
Yeah.
And so this documentary is just footage following her around, getting in and out of cars and preparing and chatting with the security and eventually meeting the folks that have come to see her and signing their little items. I have to admit, I thought it made me feel a little depressed, because she was doing it for charity. So I guess she has a good motive. But it's another example of how people's affection for these movies is monetized to the limit. They're showing how they're bringing people in and sort of pushing them up against Jamie Lee Curtis and taking a picture, pulling them out. It's done in a nice way, and I suppose probably in some instances when they have those conventions, it's not necessarily done in a nice way. And Jamie Lee Curtis seems like a very nice person. But I wonder, but for me, it's a personal thing. I always find that sort of crass commercialism takes some of the fun out of being a fan,
Yeah.
I suppose you couldn't do it any other way. You couldn't get the people to come, and the big stars are not going to come if they can't make a buck off of it.
Make some money out of it, yeah.
But still, it diminishes it. And an hour-long documentary about that just seemed to be extraordinary.
Didn't need to be that long, yeah.
But other than that, there really wasn't anything else on the disc. There was the TV scenes, which really amounted to very little.
They
And
didn't cut those back into the film.
well, I
Or
understand that
just,
there is a disc where they have the TV version and its intact versions edited for television with the additional scenes cut in. But the version I was watching was just the theatrical version with the TV scenes as an extra. It really only amounts to what, 2 or 3 scenes?
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a tremendous amount of stuff, and nothing that you would feel was missed by not having it included in the original theatrical release. So, are you like most fans, and you have every different version that's ever been?
No, actually, at this point, I don't even own a physical
Oh, really?
copy of this one. I was gonna pick one up the other day at work. I was like, well, I'll just wait because I know there's gonna be at least one more gigantic box set, which I don't even want the other ones. If I could just own 1 and 3,
Right.
like I don't even like 2.
Yeah, a lot of
2
people
is
say they don't
2 is
care.
like that's when they started doing the whole he's related to her. I was just like, what?
It's
Like
it's
how weird is that?
it's funny that they made the same choice that Star Wars made.
Yeah.
I guess that's the only direction that you can go in when you're looking. If you have a limited cast, right? There's only a certain number of characters, so you're looking for some way to make it more interesting. And I guess the first thought that occurs to people is let's have them be related in some way.
I think I read something where he needed to come up with something quick because they were wanting to do a part 2, and I guess he was drunk one night and that idea came in. That's what stuck. So
Well, see, this is the dangers of drinking. Right?
yeah, I just don't think they needed to be related.
Yeah, it doesn't really make a tremendous amount of sense. I assume a lot of it takes place in the hospital.
Yeah, it's pretty much the entire movie is in the hospital.
It's kind of hard to understand why they just didn't preserve the same simplicity. Just have him attacking her in the hospital or
Yeah.
stalking her in the hospital. That seems to me there'd be enough there to fill a 2-hour movie if you want.
Or he gets shot 6 times. They assume he's dead. Take him to the morgue. He's not dead. That's how he gets to the hospital. So now he's
Right.
up and running around and killing everybody else.
Well, that is though that does reveal one of the dangers of doing sequels is that when you're watching the first film, this was true of a lot of movies. I think it's probably even true of it's certainly true of the Phantasm movies. It's true of Terminator. The illogical things in the first film don't come right away. They come
Yeah.
in the course of the story. And so if you don't really understand something, it doesn't stop the movie for you because you assume it's going to be resolved before the end of the movie. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But the problem with the sequels is they start with the illogical stuff right in front of you. Like, for instance, how do you explain now that we're beginning the movie now, how do you explain the fact that the serial killer has been shot and stabbed and poked in the eye and he's still up and running around, That's kind of a hard one to get around. And I guess inevitably you have to start looking for some supernatural explanation.
Yeah, that's how they went with it.
It's not like they had a really good ER staff and they managed to resuscitate him.
Yeah, bring him back.
Plugged out all the bullets. And so, yeah, I think it's similar to Jaws and The Exorcist. It's not something that you probably should be doing sequels to, but
yeah.
the money involved makes it absolutely imperative that they do a sequel.
And that's what makes the Friday 13th franchise and the Nightmare on Elm Street. It's just like, I mean, with Nightmare on Elm Street, that's kind of different because he's not even a physical character. You know what I'm saying? It's all it's supposed to be in the dream world. But with Friday 13th, it's like, okay, so how do we keep bringing this guy back for the next one? Now he's a zombie, and now now we got to have a girl with psychic abilities who brings you back to life. It just gets too ridiculous. You can't just continue to do that.
Well, especially in the case of the Friday the 13th, the character that became the franchise character wasn't even in the first film.
The first one, yeah.
So that's an extraordinary development that they actually managed. They sort of stumbled on the character that would become the valuable character.
I guess technically he was, but he was just at the end.
Right.
of the first one. He wasn't the killer because it was just a dream sequence at the end of the first one.
So they hinted at it, but
Yeah.
but in all the sequels, I don't know how many they've done in the years since, but yeah, again, I suppose that to a certain extent, people who are fans of these type of movies, it almost is a relief that the sequels that they make are so bad,
Yeah.
because it means that your affection and your interest in the original film is left. I mean, if they actually managed, even by accident, to come up with a better movie, it would sort of be sad, right? So
Yeah, because I like this one more than the original.
Nobody really wants
I
to
won't
see
tell anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. You feel like you're cheating on the first film, right?
Yeah.
But with the sequels, because of this problem of trying to come up with some idea that will be as effective as the first film, there's very little likelihood that anybody's ever going to make something as good as the first film.
No.
But maybe that's why the sequels are popular, because people sort of like going to see something that's kind of crappy and joking about it with their friends afterwards,
Yeah, makes no sense. You don't have to think about it. Of course, the kills get more. They get more better kills, and so it's just like that's what it becomes.
Right. With Halloween, I guess right from the second film, they were competing with the other
With Friday
serial
13th
killers,
at that
right?
point, yeah.
So one of the things that you could say was a pleasant surprise about the first one, that it wasn't too explicit. That immediately that was thrown away.
Yeah.
Can't do that anymore. No taste, please.
Yeah.
But well, it's a remarkable thing, and I guess this has been popular all over the world, right? I mean, it's been a success everywhere.
All right.
I think I saw a poster from some I don't know if it was a Middle Eastern country or Africa or somewhere. One of those hand painted posters, movie posters. So I guess it's reached out even to places where nobody knows what Halloween is or cares. Because I guess Halloween is pretty strictly American
holiday. Yeah.
Right? I don't even think they celebrate it in the UK, do they?
I'm not for sure. I know there's probably some countries in some parts of Europe that probably have more primitive versions of what we do here.
They would at least know what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I don't think they do the candy part of
right.
it.
Trick or treating and
the
all
trick or
that.
treating, yeah. But I think there's other aspects of Halloween that they
that
do celebrate.
That may be the United States' one great contribution to Western civilization.
Yeah.
We came up with Halloween. So that's one thing we can say.
Yeah.
USA. But yeah, it's it's hard to knock. Like I say, my personal preference. I like The Fog too, but again, I didn't think it was in the same league as The Thing or the other two films.
I think I'm with you. I think The Thing and Escape from New York are probably my favorite John Carpenter movies.
Yeah,
and then The Halloween, just my favorite slasher movie out of all of them.
Right,
but not my favorite John Carpenter.
Yeah, just as a film, it's probably. I mean, I don't even think he would claim that it's his best work. It's just one of the strange things about show business and audience reaction that this happened to be the thing that probably he'll be remembered
It just
for.
worked at the time.
Right?
Came along at the perfect time.
Yeah, he hit it big first time. I guess the only thing he'd done before this, had he done Elvis? I think he had done the Elvis miniseries.
I think he'd done the Precinct 13, and I think that may have been
that's
it.
Right. Assault on Precinct 13, yes.
Yeah,
And he also wrote.
I don't know if he done Elvis yet or not.
He wrote. Elvis came after Halloween.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. He did. He wrote the script for Black Moon Rising.
Yeah.
Tommy Lee Jones movie, action movie. So he was a pretty busy guy back then.
Yeah.
And Doc Star, I guess that was actually officially his first film, although that was like a student film. Doc Star with Dan O'Bannon, spoke about recently. So, but my feeling is when you get right down to it, the one thing that is absolutely for the ages that comes from this film is the music.
The music and the mask. Yeah.
And the mask, yes. But the music, especially because it's so simple, it's not
Oh,
a very
yeah.
complex thing, and it's so effective. And it's sort of similar to the why didn't they ever do a Halloween movie before? It's like,
Yeah.
why didn't anybody ever stumble upon that particular combination of notes and the way it's arranged? It creates such an unnerving feeling, and at the same time, it's sort of pleasant to listen to.
Oh, yeah.
It's evocative of Halloween now. It's almost like Halloween's theme song, literally.
Yeah.
The
I mean,
holiday.
it kind of reminds me of the Phantasm music a little bit,
Yes.
where it's kind of there's something off about it, but it's still enjoyable. It's like music.
Right, right. I guess those guys were sort of following the lead of was it Mike Oldfield, the guy who did Tubular Bells,
Yeah.
who never wanted his music to be used as horror movie work.
And Goblin always comes to
And
mind
Goblin, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
that Dawn of the Dead music and all of the Italian giallo films of that time.
And there's also, speaking of Lalo Schifrin, he wrote a score for, it was either Magnum Force, I think it was Magnum Force. That is the most frightening music that had ever been used in a horror movie. It's got like choral stuff on it, and it really sounds like what possibly he had done for William Friedkin for The Exorcist, which William Friedkin supposedly threw out the window.
Yeah.
But I would have liked to have heard that because that Magnum Force score, it's funny how sometimes in like crime movies and mysteries, the music can be as effective as horror movie music, more effective. Like, for instance, in many of the episodes of Columbo, they have, I guess the guy is Billy Goldenberg, I think is the guy that did the music. And very often the music has the same sort of unsettling, mysterious quality to it that you would expect in a horror movie or in an old dark house movie, at least, So that's kind of a funny thing. But I love the music for this.
Oh, yeah. I guess it was written in a rare 5/4 time signature that I guess he learned from his father. So I guess his father was some kind of composer, musician, and of some sort.
Well, he now I guess that he's not making movies as frequently. He seems to have turned his attention entirely to music.
He's on tour and everything.
Right? So
even done the music for the new Halloween movies that came out.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Right? So he's keeping his hand in that respect.
Yeah. Another one of his great, like Prince of Darkness, that had a really good score on it too. That's one of my favorites. Favorite John Carpenter movies.
Yeah, that's enough. He seems to have an understanding of what works. I think also maybe we give him a little more room. We're not as critical of his music because we like the sound. It's John Carpenter. It's sort of reassuring. I love the score for Escape from New York. I used to play that all the time when I was a kid. So John Carpenter. He's a pretty talented guy. He's got a lot going for him. It's too bad that it seems like at a certain point in his career, after the failures of box office failures of a few of his films, that he became discouraged.
Yeah.
Because I think
it's his fault because he made Escape from L.A. and I think that was his downfall.
Well, he did. If you do something, if I had done something like The Thing, I would expect to be, carried on people's shoulders. And to have that come out, and just by bad luck, you come out, I guess, the same week or same month as E.T.
Yeah.
That's just a shame. It's and admittedly, it was a difficult movie to watch at that time because it really wasn't in step with the feeling of the time. And people were looking for lighter, sort of brainless entertainment. And that, didn't fit the bill. It was very, very rough to watch the first time. I don't know if you remember when you first saw that movie, if you saw it in a theater or you saw it on tape, but that was a real hard movie to watch. It was so grim and so unrelenting.
Yeah.
And
I don't remember the first time I seen it. I know I probably didn't see it in the theater, so it would have been on rental or just TV or something.
Well, first time I saw it was on tape. I rented the tape, and I played it at home when my family around it. My father left the room, Just, life is too hard to
Yeah.
go through.
And I've never seen E.T., so I don't know which
Oh
one.
my God! You
Which
haven't
one's the
seen-
best one? No.
Well, I probably would. I'm kind of an outlier. I still have great respect and admiration for Spielberg and for his films, and I think E.T. is a wonderful movie. It's now the situation is reversed. Now E.T. is the movie that's out of its time. Now
Yeah.
The Thing feels more in keeping with our time, and it sort of is it belatedly captured the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
Whereas E.T. seems, maybe because E.T. was such a success, it was imitated to death.
Oh yeah.
And when that happens, it's hard to watch the original without feeling like you've seen this all before, you know.
Yeah, just imagine the the blood test scene from the thing is like complete. You could just like that could just be they could be in there testing for the coronavirus during
Right?
the pandemic. It's the same kind of tension of like who's got it.
That is very definitely in step with what we're going through now, and so it was unfortunate, and I was one of apparently 3 people that showed up for Big Trouble in Little China when that
Yeah.
opened, and I thought that was wonderful when I saw it, and I still think it's wonderful. But you know, it just when you make 2 movies like that and you put your heart and soul into it, and it doesn't
Yeah.
get you any breaks, then I guess you become a director for hire, which is what he did. Although he did do Starman, which did get
Yeah,
quite a bit
that's
of
a good one.
attention.
Yeah.
So his, you know, it wasn't such a terrible thing. But he did eventually sort of go back to making relatively low budget horror movies, which is unusual, right?
Yeah. I mean he had the vampires. That was a good one. Ghost of Mars, I don't know what he was thinking with that. That just was not a good movie altogether. And then Escape from LA, the only thing that really destroyed it was those horrible green
Special
screen
effects,
special
yeah.
effects just brought that movie down.
Well, the first movie did not have perfect special effects either, but
Right.
it sort of added to it because you understood when you were watching it that it was a low budget action movie. And
But I mean, even like whenever he's flying into the city, his computer screen, I mean, that's all practical. That was
right,
like
yes,
black cardboard or foam that they put
right.
glow in the dark tape on. That looks good. But whenever he's surfing in front of a blue screen, it
Yeah.
stands out more worse than
Well,
what.
maybe it's what you said earlier. When you have too much money, it can
Yeah, too
actually
much money.
work
Yeah.
against you, you know. And maybe raised expectations as well. The expectations were sky high for that film. So
Yeah, it's got to be bigger than our last one. No, but nobody
Yeah.
wants to go watch Escape from New York again.
right, yeah.
You know.
I
Turns out
still
you do though.
well, I don't know what Kurt Russell, what sort of shape he's in. I assume he's not ready to do anymore. But
No.
I wouldn't mind seeing another one. But the thing that I liked so much about the first movie was that um, it had a drive to it. You know,
Yeah.
you felt like you hit the ground running. You know, and it doesn't stop until the end. And the music helps that. And sort of provides gives the film an engine that keeps it going. But we know what he needs to do. We know that there's a deadline when it needs to be done by, and go. You know.
Yep. And he was great in it, and all the supporting cast was great.
Yes.
Donald Pleasance, Ernest Borgnine. I mean, they were all great in it.
But and even though it has a sense of humor, it has some witty stuff in it.
Yeah.
It's more or less meant to be taken seriously. It's just pretty much a straightforward action movie. Whereas I get the impression with Escape from LA, they really wanted to make it more of a comedy, more obviously a comedy,
Yeah.
more obvious, perhaps even campy. Maybe that's why they thought those special effects would be acceptable, you know.
But they're not.
No.
It looks bad.
It's not what we're going to that type of movie to see.
To see, yeah.
To hear people who live in Los Angeles make jokes about the town, about the movie industry, which I guess is at least part of what you get in that. It just isn't appealing to the rest of us, you know. And it may simply be a case of the second film being too similar to the first.
Yeah.
And because it doesn't really look like they varied the plot that much. It's just with Escape from LA, it wasn't as engrossing and wasn't as entertaining. But I won't knock it. Maybe I'll go back to it and discover that I love
And
it.
try it,
I
yeah.
haven't watched it in a long time. And he did do a lot of movies. So it's
Oh, yeah.
possible that there are other films that I overlooked or, didn't think much of when they first came out. And that if I went back to them, I would appreciate them better. Problem with Carpenter is he established a reputation based on Halloween and The Fog so early that he was the master,
Yeah.
new Hitchcock, that we expected every movie that he did to
To be
be
horror and
right, and to be even more impressive.
yeah.
And I think you could say right from The Fog, it wasn't quite living up to those expectations. Right?
It's just weird to think that you can't go back and top your low budget movie.
Yeah. He caught.
Studio gives you billions of dollars and you just can't capture that same magic that you did with your $300,000 movie.
Well, when you look at The Fog, for instance, you see how, and that was, I assume, a more elaborate and expensive production, although it wasn't like a big budget movie, but
yeah, it probably wasn't that big. It still felt small, like a small cast, small locations.
But right away they're doing much more elaborate stuff, right? I mean, it's taking place in multiple locations, and there's a much larger cast, and there's stunt work like hanging off the water tower or whatever it is, that scene, and it feels like a much bigger production, but the story becomes spread out, which is exactly the opposite of what he did in Halloween.
Halloween, yeah.
I mean, I always assumed that The Fog was going to head in the direction of those ghost pirates or whatever they were showing up at the big gala event and killing everybody. I thought that was going to be the climax of the movie. And what they do instead, because that would be rather expensive to shoot, they take their central characters and they drive them away to a more remote location. So the rest of the movie plays out as a more contained thing. And that was a disappointment to me. I assume the audience felt the same way.
I don't know. That's the first movie I saw in the theater. I still remember seeing it in the theater. So I must have been 5, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember what year it came out in. But I remember the ending of them chopping off Hal Holbrook's head was always shocking. That's always a good, to me, that's still a good ending.
Oh, yeah.
Him clutching onto that cross.
If you can, and Hal Holbrook is always entertaining in those roles. He certainly was important to the success of Creepshow. He did a lot of good work back around that time. But I understand that The Fog needed to have extensive reshoots because after he finished it, he and I guess the distributor decided it just wasn't scary enough.
Right.
So they went back and they added in a lot of extra stuff, a lot of stuff that actually now we would say is the movie, but it's sort of added in later. But the Thing, I guess, was it The Thing? No, Escape from New York followed that, right? I guess it was The Fog and then Escape from New York. Escape from New York, and that certainly, he did himself proud on that one.
Oh, yeah.
And then eventually The Thing, which I imagine is probably his best film overall. So yeah, he's had an impressive career. God knows if there's still some possibility of him coming back and coming up with a new idea that would actually make a good movie. I don't know.
I don't know. I figure he's probably done with that, though. He's probably just sticking to the music.
Yeah, and he gets a check every time they make a remake of his movies.
Yeah. He doesn't care how bad those are.
Yeah, I guess he gets, it's the best of both worlds. He gets the money and he doesn't have to worry about accepting any of the blame for.
They can say, well, I didn't do that.
I saw some interview recently where they were asking him about elevated horror, and he said he didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. So perhaps he's not keeping up on the latest releases. Maybe that's just as well. Anyway,
I don't know. He every time I see him, I think he always comes off as, to me, just going by the way he looks and talks sometimes, almost like kind of, if you met him, I feel like he would be kind of like, I'm above you.
Yeah,
Like, don't
well,
bother me, go away.
well, I've seen him in some instances when he's talking to fans, where at conventions and
Yeah.
whatnot, where he's certainly blunt and straightforward, and people say things that he disagrees with. He'll tell them to go fuck themselves.
Yeah.
But he's not. It doesn't seem to be somebody who says things just to be cruel or
Right,
to
yeah.
humiliate people. But I sort of, with recent experiences and with all the experiences I've had up to this point in all my creative ventures, I sort of can understand why people end up behaving that way.
Yeah.
Because it is so exhausting to have to deal with all the folks that seem to think they know better than you.
Yeah.
They're coming to you and they're giving you money to make something, and then they're second guessing you or fucking things up for you.
Yeah.
And it's just it's very frustrating. But that's the business, I guess.
Yep.
Anyway,
So Halloween, do you recommend people watch Halloween?
oh,
on
very
Halloween?
much. Not that my recommendation is necessary. I'm sure
Yeah.
people they're probably watching that now instead of watching
Yeah.
this. But,
Yeah.
but yes, I recommend this. I can't offer any opinion about any of the sequels. I saw Halloween 2 when it played on TV. I don't really remember it that well, other than not liking it. Halloween 3, as I think I mentioned to you in a previous episode, I worked at a theater where that premiered, so I've seen that many, many times.
Yeah.
And I had the whole theater to myself to watch it because nobody showed up. And I like that. I like that when it came out, but I understood why it wasn't popular, because it didn't have the franchise character in it. The other sequels I haven't seen, and I'd have no desire, to be honest. And I think Rob Zombie, although he seems like a talented guy and an admirable person in many ways, I think he made sort of the cardinal mistake of trying to expand on Michael Myers' backstory in his reboot, which just my feeling is that just is the wrong direction to go in with a character like this.
Well, it doesn't. Like I said, it doesn't work for this movie. Like this movie, the less you know about Michael Myers, that's what makes it good. When Rob Zombie done his, and he done this backstory, this little kid's upbringing, all that, it works for his movie. So I like the first one. I like Season of the Witch Part 3, and I like both of Rob Zombie's Halloweens.
Right.
That's it. That's the only ones
Well, I guess that's not too
again.
bad when you stop and think. A lot of franchises that have gone on as long as Halloween has don't even have that many good entries. So that's. But you would say generally you feel the first one is still the best one.
Yeah, the first one's still the best. Yeah.
So, well, that's good to know. So I'm not missing too much by not checking out the other ones. Although maybe I'll give Rob Zombie's a whirl one of these days.
I'm sure they're on streaming somewhere.
Oh, I'm sure, yes.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes. Yeah, I definitely recommend Halloween, and I recommend the soundtrack as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So.
Yeah, I recommend you watch it at Halloween. I recommend you watch it at Christmas during the summertime. You can watch it anytime.
Yeah, well, I suppose so. It's most effective at Halloween, though, I think. It's one of those things that just seems right. It's such a perfect evocation of the Halloween spirit that it's ideal for it, and its simplicity makes it great for watching on TV, or if you have parties or things like that.
You can just put it on the background.
Right, it's not something you have to spend a lot of time listening to the dialogue. Right, everybody knows the story, and it's pretty straightforward. So
but with the time frame that all the sequels came out in, I'm surprised there wasn't a 3D version.
Yeah, that is
like
funny.
A Halloween 3D.
Well, I assume that Friday the 13th probably made quite a bit of money with their.
Yeah, they had one. Nightmare on Elm Street had a 3D movie.
Well, I'm not a fan of 3D, so I'm not sorry that they didn't do it. But you're right; it is kind of odd that they didn't give it a try.
And I guess the only thing left to do would be to go to space.
That's right. Yes. Maybe battle. What's the other character? Jason in space.
Jason.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's something to look forward to. They'll probably get around to that before long.
Yeah, they'll get to it.
Now that Tom Cruise is going to start shooting movies in space.
In space, there we go.
And we had William Shatner, the source of this Michael Myers mask. He took a trip into space recently.
All come together.
Yeah, so that's the direction everything has to go in.
Yep.
But,
So, where can everybody find your movies at for Halloween? I
both-
recommend yours too.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And I imagine both of them would probably make pretty decent Halloween fare if you go in with low expectations. Demon Resurrection is my zombie movie, and Sleepless Nights is my vampire movie, and they're both on Amazon. And Sleepless Nights is also free on Plex TV, with more platforms coming soon, presumably. And Demon Resurrection is up on several platforms. Momento is the most
Is that a
recent
new
one.
one?
That's a new one. Roku TV and Tubi.
Yeah,
I guess is that's the
Tubi,
big
yeah.
one. Yeah. So if people do a search on Demon Resurrection, they'll find that
It'll find it.
quite
Yeah.
a few places.
I noticed Google does that now. If you search for a movie in Google, over here on the right-hand side, it tells you everywhere you can stream it.
Right. It's very convenient. Yeah.
Yeah.
And hopefully more streaming things will be coming in
Yeah.
the future. So
I feel like if we get any more streaming services, Disney's going to come through and buy them all.
well, I'm actually
Down the line.
surprised. How is it possible that these services could all be making money? But I guess they are.
Oh yeah.
It may be one of those instances, sort of like early in the years of VHS rentals, where a whole bunch of stores will open up and then over time close
It
down.
dwindled down to
Right.
the one local.
Right.
Every town had one rental store.
Or you'll have like a big chain that buys
Yeah,
up all
that
the
buys
all
up
the
all,
small
yeah.
stores. Yeah. So that's the process that will, assuming that the world doesn't end through nuclear disaster,
Oh, yeah.
that's the process that we'll be going through.
Looks like
with
it could be a
streaming
possibility.
Seems like it, hopefully a remote possibility, but
Yeah,
we're closer to it now than we have been in the past. So
yeah.
it's a good time to watch a serial killer movie.
There you go.
Raise our spirits.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is a good episode, and until next week, we will continue to watch the good, the bad, and the cheaply made.
Thanks.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.